Welcome back to the True Crime Podcast. In today's episode, we delve into a story that begins in an upscale neighborhood, where the peaceful atmosphere is abruptly disrupted when police surround a house on Hollow Drive. Inside, they uncover a scene that starkly contrasts with the calm outside. What started as an ordinary affair has unraveled into a complex tale of deceit, betrayal, and ultimately, murder. This story will challenge your understanding of those closest to you. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to click that subscribe button, like this episode, and share it with your loved ones. We also want to hear from you, so feel free to leave your comments as the story unfolds. Maria and David Thompson were the kind of couple that everyone admired. Their lives appeared flawless from the outside. Maria was a thriving real estate agent known for her charm and ability to close deals, making her one of Dallas's top professionals. David worked as an investment banker. His demanding job suited him well. He thrived under pressure and always sought more success. Together, they lived in a spacious home in a wealthy neighborhood, enjoying the luxuries their successful careers afforded them. They drove nice cars, hosted fancy dinner parties, and were often seen as the ideal couple in their social circles. David's younger brother, Andrew, frequently visited them. Andrew was an aspiring musician with a free-spirited nature that contrasted sharply with David's serious demeanor. Andrew had a talent for lighting up a room just by being there. Unlike David, he wasn't burdened by responsibilities and led a spontaneous life, passionately pursuing his music career despite limited success. He often stayed with Maria and David for weeks, especially when he needed a place to stay between gigs. Over time, his presence became a regular part of their lives. Initially, Maria and Andrew's relationship was purely platonic. They talked about music, life, and dreams for the future. But as time went on, their conversations grew more personal and intimate. They began sharing secrets and spending more time together, particularly when David was at work. The connection between Maria and Andrew deepened into a passionate secret that neither had anticipated. They knew their actions were wrong, yet the thrill of their hidden romance was irresistible. They arranged secret meetings in discreet locations, sometimes at a hotel across town, other times in Andrew's car parked in isolated spots. They exchanged coded messages to conceal their affair, especially from David. As the relationship progressed, their bond intensified. Maria and Andrew craved each other more with every passing moment, and the fear of being caught only heightened their desire. Andrew began to pressure Maria to leave David. Tired of living in secrecy, he wanted to be with her openly and start a new life together. But Maria was conflicted. She loved Andrew deeply, yet she also cherished the stability, luxury, and respect she had with David. This internal struggle left her feeling trapped between two worlds, unable to fully commit to either. The excitement of their affair began to wane. Reality set in, and both Maria and Andrew knew they couldn't keep going like this forever. Maria became distant, worried about the possibility of discovery, while Andrew grew frustrated, unable to understand why she wouldn't just leave David. This tension led to frequent arguments, and the passion that once defined their relationship was now overshadowed by doubt and frustration. David, who had always been suspicious of Andrew's constant presence, decided to confront the issue. He had noticed subtle changes in Maria's behavior, including the way she smiled at Andrew. David couldn't shake the feeling of unease that grew with each passing day. The sudden late-night work meetings and the hushed phone calls he thought he hadn't heard raised his suspicions about Maria. To uncover the truth, he hired a private investigator to follow her. For weeks, the investigator tracked Maria's movements, documenting everything she did. Eventually, the investigator presented David with a folder filled with damning photographs and text messages, confirming his worst fears: Maria was indeed having an affair with Andrew. The revelation hit him like a punch to the gut. Rage consumed him, but he maintained a calm facade as he thanked the investigator. He began to devise a plan for how to confront Maria. The moment of truth arrived on a warm evening when Maria returned home from another one of her supposed meetings, only to find David waiting for her in the living room. A folder of evidence lay open on the coffee table. Though David's expression was calm, there was a fierce intensity in his gaze that unsettled Maria. Without raising his voice, he invited her to sit down. One by one, he presented the photographs. As each image flashed before her eyes, the color drained from Maria's face as she realized she had been caught. Initially, she tried to dismiss the evidence, claiming the photos were doctored, but David's evidence was overwhelming. Then, he revealed the printouts of their text exchanges. Each message was more incriminating than the last. Maria broke down, pleading for forgiveness and insisting the affair meant nothing, that her heart still belonged to David. But his trust was irreparably shattered, and he had no interest in her excuses. After hours of tense dialogue, David stood up, cast one last look at Maria, and walked out of the room. He didn't shout, nor did he shed tears, but Maria could see the profound change in his demeanor. In the days that followed, David's thoughts were consumed by a desire for revenge. Anger and betrayal fueled him, yet he understood the importance of careful planning. If he were to act, it had to be calculated and precise. He researched various methods to commit the perfect crime, spending countless hours online poring over articles, videos, and even books on criminal psychology. David had concocted a plan that went beyond just killing Maria. He wanted Andrew to suffer as well. His scheme involved murdering Maria and framing Andrew for the crime. Convinced he could orchestrate everything down to the finest detail without being detected, David meticulously collected evidence that would implicate Andrew. He planted some of Andrew's belongings in their home, creating a narrative that would suggest he was present at the crime scene. David also began to manipulate the digital correspondence between Maria and Andrew, leaving a trail that would hint at a heated argument between them. He was certain the police would discover it, strengthening the argument for Andrew's motive. He had everything in place. All that was left was to wait for the perfect moment to execute his plan. Throughout this period, David maintained an outwardly calm demeanor, carrying on with his daily life as though everything was normal. However, inside he was filled with seething rage, counting down the days until he could put his plan into action. David's mind raced. The anger and betrayal had crystallized into a cold resolve. He knew Maria's life had to end, and Andrew had to take the blame for it. This was not a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was a carefully crafted plan that had taken shape ever since he uncovered the affair. David understood he had to be methodical. Every detail had to align perfectly to avoid any slip-ups that could lead back to him. In the days leading up to his plan, David focused on eliminating any traces that might link him to the impending crime. He meticulously cleaned surfaces he was likely to touch, ensuring that any object that could be associated with the act was wiped clean of his fingerprints. Additionally, he began to plant evidence in locations where the police would be sure to discover it. David had secretly acquired a small vial of Andrew's blood, which he kept hidden in the back of the refrigerator. This blood would be pivotal in framing Andrew for the murder. August 9th was the date David had circled on his calendar. He had mentally rehearsed the plan countless times, ensuring every detail was accounted for. When the day arrived, David appeared composed, burying his emotions deep within. He went about his day as usual, engaging with colleagues and maintaining a facade of normalcy, all while knowing that by dawn the following day, his life would be irrevocably altered. That evening, David made his final preparations, selecting the kitchen as the site of his confrontation with Maria. It was a space that could be easily cleaned and where Maria felt most at ease. He poured 2 glasses of wine, one for himself and one for her. The glass meant for Maria was laced with a potent sedative he had acquired weeks earlier under the pretense of needing help with insomnia. David waited in the living room, feigning interest in the television, until he heard Maria's car pull into the driveway at 10 p.m. When she entered, she appeared fatigued, though a faint smile briefly illuminated her face. That smile vanished the moment she saw David. Sensing the tension, David quickly reassured her, claiming he wanted to talk things over and forgive her for her betrayal. Relieved, Maria accepted the glass of wine he offered her. As they chatted, David pretended to be invested in mending their relationship. Maria, believing his facade, began to relax. However, as the minutes ticked by, she felt increasingly drowsy, her head growing heavy. David observed her closely, taking note of when her eyelids started to close. Within moments, Maria slumped over, unconscious in her chair. Seizing the opportunity, David swiftly transported her limp body to the garage, where he had already set the stage for his plan. He strategically placed one of Andrew's guitar picks on the floor near Maria's body, making it appear as though it had been dropped in the heat of a struggle. Then, he carefully smeared the vial of Andrew's blood on Maria's clothing, ensuring it was positioned where investigators would easily find it. This blood evidence was critical for convincing the authorities that Andrew had committed the crime. Next, David retrieved a kitchen knife, one that belonged to Andrew and was often used for his artistic endeavors. The knife had a distinctive design, making it easy for the police to link it back to Andrew. In a calculated move, David plunged the knife into Maria's chest, ensuring the wound matched the blade's size and shape. He had studied crime scenes enough to know how to simulate a struggle convincingly. After stabbing Maria, he arranged her body to suggest she had fought back against her attacker. He overturned several items in the garage, knocked over a chair, and placed some of Andrew's personal belongings nearby. Everything was designed to construct a narrative that Andrew had violently attacked and killed Maria in a fit of rage. Once satisfied with the staged scene, David proceeded to clean up. He meticulously erased any evidence of his presence, wiping down surfaces to ensure that nothing could trace back to him. His actions were deliberate and methodical, aimed at ensuring that all evidence pointed squarely at Andrew. The next morning, David felt the weight of his actions looming as he prepared for the inevitable consequences of his twisted scheme. David placed the call to the police, his voice trembling with feigned shock and horror as he informed the dispatcher that he had discovered his wife dead in the garage. The authorities arrived within minutes, swiftly transforming the scene into a whirlwind of activity as officers secured the area and initiated their investigation. David played the part of the grieving husband flawlessly, responding to the detectives' inquiries and consistently sticking to his narrative that Andrew must have killed Maria. The evidence found at the scene seemed to corroborate his claims. The knife, the guitar pick, and the bloodstains all pointed the finger at Andrew. Detectives quickly moved to issue a warrant for Andrew's arrest, convinced they had their suspect. By August 11, Andrew was in custody, bewildered and perplexed, as the police informed him of the charges against him for the murder of Maria Thompson. Despite his protests of innocence, the evidence stacked against him was substantial. From a distance, David observed the events unfold with a blank expression, his plan materializing just as he had orchestrated it. The atmosphere was tense the following morning as police officers arrived at Andrew's apartment. He had just awoken when the ominous knocks echoed in the otherwise quiet hallway. When Andrew opened the door, still groggy from sleep, he was met with the serious faces of the detectives. They informed him he was under arrest for Maria Thompson's murder. Shocked and confused, Andrew was handcuffed and led to the patrol car, his mind racing to comprehend the gravity of the situation. At the station, Andrew found himself in an interrogation room, a cold, sterile environment designed to instill a sense of guilt, even in the innocent. The detectives sat across from him, their expressions unreadable as they began probing into his relationship with Maria. They asked pointed questions about their affair and what transpired on the night of August 9th. Andrew answered honestly, admitting to the affair but firmly denying any involvement in Maria's death. He insisted that he loved her and would never harm her. However, the detectives remained skeptical. The evidence against him was too compelling to overlook. They presented him with damning details: the knife, the guitar pick, the blood, all of it seemingly tied him to the crime. The detectives also showed him text messages exchanged between him and Maria, revealing their clandestine meetings and intentions to be together. These messages, they argued, indicated a potential motive for murder. Overwhelmed, Andrew recognized how incriminating it all appeared, yet he was resolute in his innocence. He felt the crushing weight of the reality that he was being framed, though he couldn't fathom how or why it was happening. As the investigation advanced, detectives began to spot inconsistencies in David's narrative. He seemed unnaturally calm for a man who had just lost his wife in such a horrific manner. What initially appeared as composure now raised their suspicions. They decided to scrutinize David's alibi further, reviewing security footage from cameras in the neighborhood to confirm his whereabouts on the night of the murder. Their findings were surprising. The footage revealed David's car leaving the house multiple times throughout the night, contradicting his claim of being home all evening. This discovery was significant. The detectives now had questions. Why had David left the house? Where had he gone? They noted that David had been unusually accommodating during the investigation, appearing eager to assist, which was atypical behavior for someone who had just experienced such a traumatic event. This demeanor further fueled their suspicions that David might be concealing something. The detectives conducted a meticulous investigation, sifting through David's computer files and personal belongings in search of any evidence that could link him to the murder. It didn't take long for them to uncover crucial information. On David's computer, they found a series of disturbing internet searches, including phrases such as "how to frame someone for murder" and "perfect crime." These searches had taken place in the weeks leading up to Maria's death, marking a significant turning point in the investigation. The evidence indicated that David had premeditated Maria's murder and had skillfully set the scene to implicate Andrew. Further searches of David's home revealed even more incriminating evidence. Hidden away in his garage was a box containing items directly connected to the crime, including gloves, cleaning supplies, and a vial of Andrew's blood. This discovery solidified the detective's suspicions, showing that David's meticulously crafted plan was beginning to fall apart, and they were starting to see the complete picture. With this new evidence, the detectives acted swiftly. David was arrested at his office, where he had been going about his day as if nothing had occurred. He was taken into custody and charged with the murder of Maria Thompson and the attempted framing of his brother, Andrew. The arrest sent shockwaves through the community. David had always been regarded as the successful and stable older brother, the one who appeared to have everything figured out. This image was now shattered. David found himself in a holding cell, awaiting trial, while Andrew was released from custody, his name cleared but forever altered by the ordeal. The betrayal cut deeply, and the loss of Maria weighed heavily on his heart. As the trial for David Thompson unfolded in October, it became a media spectacle, with reporters eagerly gathering outside the courthouse for any updates. The prosecution presented a compelling case against David, meticulously laying out the evidence, including the security footage, the planted evidence, and the sinister internet searches that illustrated his malevolent intentions. Andrew took the stand, recounting his relationship with Maria and how David had manipulated him. He spoke of the guilt he felt over the affair, mixed with the shock and disbelief that his brother would betray him in such a horrific manner. The courtroom was silent as Andrew described the tragic events surrounding Maria's death, his voice thick with emotion. David's defense team attempted to argue that he had been driven to madness by the affair, claiming his actions resulted from a temporary lapse in sanity. However, the jury remained unconvinced. The overwhelming evidence, coupled with the cold, calculated nature of the crime, was impossible to dismiss. On November 2nd, after 3 days of deliberation, the jury reached a guilty verdict. David was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, a fitting conclusion to a case that had shocked the community and devastated a family. Although Andrew was cleared of wrongdoing, he was left to piece his life back together. The affair had cost him dearly his lover, his brother, and his peace of mind. The story of the Thompson family became a cautionary tale, illustrating how quickly situations can spiral out of control and how dark secrets can tear even the closest families apart. The lingering question remains: what drives a person to such extreme actions? Was it the betrayal of a wife he once loved, or the twisted reasoning of a mind obsessed with control? Share your thoughts and don't forget to subscribe for more stories exploring the darkest corners of human nature.